Hi everybody, my name is Allison Taylor and I'm an artist and an educator, and I'm here with San Diego Craft Collective, and I'd love to show you today how to create a ceramic serving platter or tray. Perfect in time for the holidays, especially if you're having friends or family over to celebrate. There are so many different options in terms of sizes and shapes for plates and platters to serve on. I just have a few here to show you. I have a smaller one that I created, which is really perfect for just like a small cheese plate, or even what's really popular right now is like a little charcuterie plate, if you just have a little small side. And then if you wanted to go more with the circle, more traditional plate shape, you can do smaller sizes, or what I like is the nice big size platters, because these are great. You can hang them on the wall for decoration, and then when you have people over to celebrate, I put them on my dining room table, and I love to arrange all my favorite cheeses and meats and crackers and have like a nice serving platter. That's also a conversational piece because then they ask about the design. So I'm going to go over the steps of how to create one of these platters with clay. I'm just going to go ahead and turn my camera around and we'll get started. Okay, so these serving platters are actually slab built. So you want to go ahead and start flattening out whatever clay you've chose. Some artists like to kind of throw the clay around to flatten it. Some artists like to use guides with a rolling pin or a wooden dowel. And if you're lucky, you might have an actual slab roller in your studio. I do kind of a little bit of both depending on what studio I'm working in. This is a really great technique, especially if you're a beginner, because if you use guides, then you know how thick or thin your platter is going to be exactly. So these are actually 1/4 inch thick, and you can get any of these supplies at your local hardware. These are just pieces of wood, obviously, and then a wooden dowel or a rolling pin will work. And then you just want to go ahead and start rolling out your clay, and the guides will act as a stopper. So when your rolling pin reaches them, you can't go any thinner. Flip it over, you can see how my clay is on the other side. And then if you're doing a really big thick platter, you would just use a little bit thicker guides. So first step to a slab built clay platter is just getting the clay to your desired thickness. And I like to make, at least right now, I'm really liking sort of longer freehand cut forms. Charcuterie plates are very in right now. People love having lots of options, different cheeses, different meats to choose from. Even if it's just you and one other person, it's a great. Then you can kind of snack on what you like. So once you have your slab to the desired thickness, I'm gonna go ahead and smooth it out. And I'm using a rib tool. There's lots of different kinds of rib tools. I like the metal ones. Now for two of the plates that I showed you at the beginning, the way I created these was once I had my slab all laid out, I cut it and shaped it. Then I put a layer of what is called underglaze. Once the underglaze is dry, then I can take any kind of carving tool and carve any kind of design into my platter. I really like to do freehand because I think it's more organic and really shows the human hand more. Today though, I'm going to show you how to do an impression, which is a little bit different. It's when you take either a stamp or something from nature and you push it into the clay. It doesn't have to be from nature, really, it could be anything. But first I want to shape it, so you could use a template or like a perfect circle or something like that. But I'm just going to freehand it, so I'm just going to use my needle tool. And I'm just going to cut a really long oval. Doesn't have to be perfect that first cut. You can always go back and trim it. Put my excess clay off to the side here. A little bit more round over here. All right, and you can shape the edges at this time if you want. Some people really like just a straight flat plate. I like to have a little bit of a curve around all the edges. That way if you're using any sauces or jams or even olives, that nothing's rolling off. As you can see here, this one has what you would call a lip right here on the edge, just slightly curved up. And I'm going to be doing an impression, and I want to be able to roll on this, so I'm not going to curve the edges up just yet. And I just went and collected some plants from outside. Some ferns I had growing. Oh, it's shedding. Come on. I'm going to go ahead and lay this fern, whichever side you think is going to have more interesting texture. I think for this one, I'm just going to do one. I'll try to curve it a little bit though. You can just use your fingers to kind of push it into the clay until it sticks. Or sometimes you need the roller like that. Just pop that. So I have this little hand roller I'm going to use. Make sure it's going to stick in there. Push into the clay, and it'll work like a stamp. It'll leave a really beautiful impression of the plant. And if it doesn't the first time, you can always take the rib tool and start again. Maybe you just didn't press hard enough. There we go, now it's sticking. You can even take your rolling pin again over it. That helps it really push into the clay. I'm actually going to leave it in there right now while I do the little lip on the edges to not mess up any of the impression. So once you have your design and the clay is wet, you just want to slightly start curving up the edges. I need to move this so you can see better in the camera. There we go. So I'm just kind of almost like pinching, slightly rolling up the edges. You can also take your roller. Some artists like to kind of just put a little bit of pressure on the edge just to kind of thin the edges out a little bit before they curl it up. So I'm just going to slightly pinch and curl. Use my fingers. Don't really need any tools here. You really want to do it at this stage when the clay is nice and soft. And then once you get enough curve you're happy with, then you can start working on smoothing out any little cracks or wrinkles. Fingernails, you can get rid of some of those marks too. All right, and then once it's all shaped the way you like it, you can also take a little bit of a wet sponge around the edge. That'll kind of help smooth out any marks, fingernail pieces. Not fingernail pieces, but fingernail marks, if you know what I mean. And then just keep shaping it and smoothing it out. All right, looks pretty good. And then you want to pull out the plant very carefully. Oh, we got one edge of it. I'm going to come from this side. There we go. Oh, it's really sticking in the clay. And sometimes if you don't want to interfere with any of the impression, artists will just leave the leaves in because they will burn out in the kiln. But I prefer to pick them off. Also, when the clay starts to dry, they'll sometimes pop off too. So So you'd want to pick all of those out. Hopefully you can see it. In the camera, my clay is really soft right now. You can see the impression. And then here's one you made a little bit earlier. And you have all the leaves picked out. You can see that beautiful fern that's been pressed into the clay. And then once this is dry, we'll fire it in the kiln. And a kiln, for anyone that doesn't know much about ceramics, is basically like a really hot oven for clay specifically. And then when it comes out of the kiln, then we'll glaze it. And if you use a really thin transparent glaze, it'll go into all the little nooks and crannies of the design, and then it'll really help the fern pop out, and you can see the design really nicely. Or you can also do, like I said before, with the underglaze. I actually painted this before I fired it and did the drawing before the first firing. So if you're interested in learning more about clay or how to do ceramics, please check out our website, San Diego Craft Collective. We have some really wonderful classes that are starting at the beginning of every month. We're trying to add new classes every month to whatever people are interested in. So definitely check us out, and I hope you like this project, and I hope you have happy holidays.